Americans' lives, quite frankly. This is going to be our Pearl Harbor moment, our 9/11 moment, only it's not going to be localized. It's going to be happening all over the country.
Dr. Adams on Fox News Sunday, a possible slight glimmer of hope for New York City. Daily deaths and ICU admissions there falling just slightly. U.S. deaths now at over 9,600. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson diagnosed with the coronavirus more than a week ago, now admitted to a hospital for tests after having symptoms for 10 days. The 55-year-old Johnson testing positive for COVID-19 on March 26th and being quarantined at number 10 Downing Street. President Trump, meantime, thinking about creating another task force amid the coronavirus pandemic.
He said he is considering an idea that was tweeted out by our own Dana Perino, suggesting he create a second task force focused solely on the longer-term goal of reopening the economy. It's important to note, despite that desire to reopen the country, President Trump said he is not going to be changing the recommendations from his task force to maintain social distancing guidelines through the end of this month.
Fox's Garrett Tenney. A tiger in New York City's Bronx Zoo testing positive for the new coronavirus, believed to be the first infection in an animal in the U.S. and the first known in a tiger anywhere. Officials saying the 4-year-old tiger and 6 other tigers and lions have also fallen ill. They're believed to have been infected by a zoo employee. All the animals are expected to recover. America's listening to Fox News.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Godao, Serena, 2 Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Democrats might be entertaining the thought of a nominating convention held in cyberspace.
Democratic presidential frontrunner Joe Biden suggests his party's presidential nominating convention, already pushed from July into August because of the pandemic, may have to move fully online to avoid packing thousands of people into an arena in Milwaukee.
We're going to have to do a convention, may have to do a virtual convention. I think we should be thinking about that right now. The idea of holding a convention is going to be necessary, but we may not be able to put 10, 20, 30,000 people in one place, and that's very possible.
Biden appearing on ABC's This Week. Salchi Ingrasso, Fox News.
Joe Biden not able to continue his campaign against Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders for the time being because of the COVID-19 outbreak. Europe, meantime, seeing further signs of hope in the coronavirus battle, with Italy's daily death number at its lowest in more than 2 weeks and its infection curve finally on a downward slope. In Spain, new deaths dropped for a 3rd straight day on Sunday. A search for drugs in South Texas leads to a wild discovery.
DEA agents conducting a narcotics investigation at a home in a small town of Mercedes, Texas, find a small zoo on a 5-acre property. The agents went armed with a search warrant and got more than they bargained for last week. Ended up seizing a white Bengal tiger, a bobcat, llamas, emu, and even a deer. Officials were forced to euthanize the bobcat and deer and the other animals taken to the zoo for a medical evaluation. No word on whether any drugs were found or whether any arrests were made. Sue Guzman, Fox News.
The coronavirus outbreak canceling a planned public gathering Sunday on the 10th anniversary of the worst U.S. mining disaster in decades. 29 men died in an explosion at the Upper Branch Mine in Whitesville, West Virginia, back on April 5th of 2010. I'm Paul Stevens, and this is Fox News.
Guam is home to strong and resolved people. As an island, we regularly deal with the destructive forces of nature together. We at Security Title know that when the storm passes, our families and neighbors will join together to clear the debris, to barbecue whatever is thawing in our freezers, and get back to the business of wholeheartedly living our lives. As our island struggles with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, let us remember that this too shall pass.
One of the easiest ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Let this message help you time it. Start soaping up now. If you're sick or caring for someone who is, wear a surgical mask or N95 respirator when you're around others. If you're not sick, wear a washable cloth face covering in case you're an asymptomatic carrier. Don't touch the front of the mask and always remove it from the back. When you cough or sneeze, use a tissue or your upper sleeve, not your hands. Choice Broadcasting reminds you to stay safe and stay clean. You can rinse now.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of our free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's a good way to start any week. Start right out with a reading of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I spent a little time talking about the Constitution here in the United States, talking about freedom and liberty and such things, talking about the government and its tendency to overreach in the best of times and using emergent situations as a pretext to overreach even farther. And we'll get into that a little bit today. So if you're looking for a conservative, libertarian, constitutionally oriented, Jeffersonian, classical liberal radio show, you have come to the right place. And if you're not, if you're some kind of a left-winger, you've even come to the right place because you could perhaps cast aside your erroneous ways and get on the road to truth and justice. So here on Tall Tales, we start every program with a feature called, Real Joe Cruz, what do we call it?
Zemi Ikutni, sir.
Yeah, and what kind of... And Zemi Ikutni is, of course, my bilingual backwards play on words that translates to Meet the Press. So we're a little bit like the Meet the Press that you'll see on NBC on Sunday, except we're a whole lot better. Needless to say, this is Tall Tales after all. I look at the editorials from each of the newspapers, gauge them against some incredibly high standards, and if either one of them passes the extremely rigorous Tall Tales check, it's eligible for the coveted Blue Star, which is on a daily basis awarded to the better of the two editorials, but never on a default basis, which is important because so often the Daily News doesn't have an editorial. Even in the absence of the Daily News editorial, the Post does not get the Blue Star by default. Its proofs and logic must be compelling enough that it would achieve the Blue Star even against more than token opposition by the Daily News. Okay, so we'll start out with the Daily News. No surprise here. We've got Krishna Kumar and James Dobbin. Does anybody here know Krishna Kumar and James Dobbins? I doubt it because they don't live here. And I don't think they've ever lived here. I don't think they'll ever live here. I don't think they ever want to live here. They're ensconced somewhere in the Gazette News Service or USA Today network hideout somewhere, penning editorials special to USA Today. Our Daily News runs this kind of stuff on the editorial page anyhow. Instead of running real local editorials, they run boilerplate from USA Today or the Gannett News Service. Needless to say, the Daily News is not in the running for the Blue Star today. From there, we go to the Post, which does a really workmanlike job of putting together editorials on a daily basis. Here's what the Post says today. The us over them treatment leaves displaced private sector workers behind. Government of Guam workers, even those who didn't have to report to work because their offices are closed, are lucky and their paychecks have so far remained intact. So there are literally hundreds of Government of Guam employees, thousands of Government of Guam employees who drew a paycheck on Friday, even though they haven't been to work in 2 weeks. Governor Lulian Guerrero said GovGuam employees were expected to get paid last weekend. The governor also announced Sunday that GovGuam employees at the front line of, now I always have to explain this, this editorial uses the phrase COVID-19, which we don't use here on Tall Tales. Instead of COVID-19, what's the phrase that we use here, Real Joe Cruz?
Wuhan virus.
There you go. We use Wuhan virus. So whenever I run across somebody else's publication that uses the impermissible phrase, I substitute. I'm not as dramatic as the Real Joe Cruz. I just substitute Wuhan virus for it. The governor also announced Sunday that GovGuam employees at the front line of the Wuhan virus response and prevention will get differential pay of up to 25% on top of their regular pay. Their differential pay took effect Sunday. And if the legislature signs off on retroactive differential pay, Government of Guam workers stand to get paid more. In contrast, private sector workers who have seen reduced hours, who have been furloughed or laid off, are now struggling to pay the bills without a lifeline from the local government other than federally funded programs that existed prior to the Wuhan virus crisis. There hasn't been any new local program to help the private sector workers ride out this financial storm. Interjecting here, not because no one at the legislature has introduced a bill that would provide for such a thing. No, that's not the reason. The reason is that with the leadership of Tina Rose Munya Barnes, the Guam legislature is still on strike. They've been on strike now since the beginning of the lockdown. But it's okay because Tina always has a good excuse. I heard her on the radio this morning when a reporter said, "Are you going to go into session soon?" Oh, yeah. Like when? Tomorrow? Well, I have to work with the rules chairman, Regine Biscoe-Lee. And, there's a lot of stuff that I have to do. And are you going to go into session soon? Oh, yeah, but, in other words, Tina Rose Munya Barnes dodged the question. So they're still on strike, but as we say, such a deal. They're still getting paid. No problem. Several senators have introduced bills that would address the private sector workers who are now out of a job because of the Wuhan virus. I'm not going to say that any of them are good bills or meritorious bills, but I am going to say that it's the legislature's job to take these bills and determine whether or not they're meritorious or not. And there are 15 people in the legislature, Tina Rose and 14 more. But Tina has taken it upon herself to be all she can be and determine that none of these bills are,
Upon themselves?
Yes, she's taken it upon herself.
Oh, herself.
I'm sorry. Yeah. My bad. Yeah, Tina has taken it upon themselves. Thanks for catching me there. I almost made a bad mistake. Yeah. There are 15 people in the legislature. There are 14 others besides Tina Rose Munya Barnes, but Tina has taken it upon themselves to determine that none of these bills are apparently meritorious enough to undergo any kind of discussion on the floor of the legislature. The legislature is on strike, and apropos of a strike, there was a picketer out in front of the legislature this morning. Yeah, ordinarily when you see a picket line, a picket sign and a picket line, that means this is who we are, this is what we don't like, and if you're with us, don't cross this picket line. That's what a picket line is all about. But Jim Moylan's picket line was a little different. He's saying, we want to go in here, but we can't. So apparently he hasn't found a way to communicate with Tina Rose Munya Barnes in this area of social distancing. Apparently Tina has really taken the whole phenomenon of social distancing to heart and is really keeping her distance from the other 14 senators. So given the social distancing that Tina is maintaining with the other senators, Jim Moylan has found a new way of communicating with her by being a sandwich man, as it were, by standing in front of the legislature holding a sign, not advertising a tire sale or Kentucky Fried Chicken or something like that, advertising his willingness to actually do his job. How severely you think he'll be punished for that, Real Joe Cruz?
Very, very severely.
It's a serious, that is a serious amount, a serious dose of misconduct. Standing out there saying, hey, here I am. I'm ready to do my job. I'm ready to do what you guys elected me for. Slapped down. Okay, so back to the Post editorial. In contrast, private sector workers who have seen reduced hours or have been furloughed or laid off are now struggling to pay the bills without a lifeline from the local government other than federally funded programs that existed prior to COVID-19. Ooh, boy, second slip up on this in the same few minutes here. The Wuhan virus crisis. There hasn't been any new local government program to help the private sector workers ride out this storm. The governor has urged displaced workers to apply for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program or food stamp benefits and other federal welfare programs, but there is a waiting time involved with federal programs. And besides that, talking about federal programs might anger the separatists because the separatists don't, want to become separate from the government of the United States. So anything like the SNAP program, food stamps, federal programs, that would be contrary to the ideals of the separatists. Private sector workers need help now. A new federal jobless benefits program have yet to flow into Guam, and the individual cash assistance that will come from the federal government, $1,200 for individuals, $2,400 for married couples, plus $500 per child, likely won't get here until weeks from now. In the meantime, private sector employees' household needed help weeks ago. about the time the legislature went on strike. Tina, as you were, the time Tina took the legislature on strike. It's striking to hear the governor thank and offer appreciation to GovGuam frontline workers and announce their differential pay and not give the same recognition to the tens of thousands of private sector workers. When it comes to workers outside the GovGuam universe, GovGuam has put very little thought into their immediate needs and welfare. I'm going to edit that. It's not GovGuam, it's Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, who told us way back at the very beginning, oh, we're okay. We've got that extra $29 million in collections, and we've got our rainy day fund, and we're going to be okay. In other words, we, being the government of Guam employees, will be okay. Now, you other folks, maybe a spot of bother out there, but you don't, I'm not that concerned about you because you don't work for the government of Guam. That might even mean, Real Joe Cruz, that the other ones aren't our people.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's strange.
Because I remember the Post at one time dinged Governor Lou Leon Guerrero by saying that it seems that our people is only employees of the government of Guam. They said that in one of their editorials. Wow. Yeah. Our people. The issue was brought up at the governor's press briefing Sunday only after reporters asked questions. We've said this before and we'll say it again now. GovGuam views private sector workers, the same ones who are often called heroes when the tourist economy is doing well, as an afterthought, even in tough times. Yet despite how they're treated, many private sector workers are working and risking Wuhan virus infection. They're working at gas pumps, at stores for essential goods, at the clinics, food production lines, housekeeping and janitorial work, and doing other tough jobs to keep our island functioning. Workers in the private sector should remember this months from now and years from now. And they need to show up on Election Day. Okay, I want to go back, and this ties into the first item on the card. The first item on the card is Lou and Tina versus the law. So here's what Governor Lou Leon Guerrero is proposing. She is proposing a differential pay. Now, everybody in the GovGuam gets paid. They get paid to stay home and do nothing. Now, in addition to that, those who are actually working and the front line of the Wuhan virus response and prevention will get a differential of 25% on top of their regular pay. The differential pay took effect Sunday, and there are a couple of other brackets too, where people are going to get, the people who are actually doing what their job is, what they get paid to do, are going to get paid extra, an extra 25%. And Lou thinks that this is really great. I've got a news article here where they're out there doing these hazardous things, etc. Now, I have in my hand here a copy of the Government of Guam DOA rules, Department of Administration rules. I thought I had it in my hand. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and here's Lou's executive order where she lays out the category 1 is 25%. Category 2, 15% to essential employees in the course of their duties that may incidentally come into contact with or close physical proximity to a population infected with or may reasonably suspected to be infected with Wuhan virus. These employees may also be providing humanitarian service or direct public assistance to the general public. And then category 3, 10% pay differential to essential employees whose positions do not allow them to telework and are mandated to perform their job duties at physical work sites predetermined by their agency heads, required by the government's response to the Wuhan virus pandemic. So those people who have to come to work because they can't do their work, telework. In other words, they actually have to come to work to do their jobs. Not only get paid, but they get paid an extra 10% because they got to come to work. Now, if this isn't nutty, you know, yeah, we're going to pay everybody in the government, we're going to pay you all. And then those who come to work, we're going to pay you extra. Now, for the ones that are exposed to hazard, we're going to give you 25%. Those who are kind of exposed to hazard, 15%. And those that are not exposed to hazard at all, but have to come to work, they're being punished by actually having to come to work and do their jobs. They're going to get an extra 10%. And the governor says, the governor also says that no directors, deputy directors, et cetera, are going to get that differential, but others will. Now, here is the really nutty part of this whole thing, and that's this, that I have in my hand here a copy of the personnel regulations of the Department of Administration. These are the personnel rules for all government employees. And this is what it says at 8.0406 C2. Those employees required to remain on duty to provide essential services shall be paid at double the regular rate or granted compensatory leave credits for the hours worked during the period the facility is closed and other employees are on excused leave. So this is natural disasters and other emergency conditions. So this rule says that anybody who is working, who remains on duty to provide essential services is paid double his ordinary rate. So everybody gets paid for staying home, and those who actually come to work get paid their regular pay plus their stay-at-home pay. Now, that's already the rule. And then Lou comes along and says, we're going to give you an extra 25%. Now, either Lou doesn't know about the Department of Administration rules, or she does know about the Department of Administration personnel rules. I don't know which of the two is the worst possibility. Probably, and then how can she not know? Because there's an article in the, she got a letter on the 4th of April from Talina Nelson calling her attention to that very rule. She said, we understand that in order to assist the island, etc., and lays it all out, we would like to ensure that the administration provide the compensation to which these employees are entitled. So she even got a letter from a senator telling her about the personnel rule that provides for those who actually come to work to get paid, in effect, double pay, and then she's got to tack on 25% of it. So do the math. Does that mean, let's say we've got someone who earns $1,000 a payday. If he stays home, he gets $1,000. If he comes to work, he gets $2,000. If you apply Lou's 25% to it, does he get 25% of $2,000 in addition to that? In other words, does he get $2,500 for coming to work and doing his job? Wow. I notice I've got Dr. Thomas Poole online here. Good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon, Judge. My call is in the form of a trivia question for you. I'm probably one of those government employees that's in that 10% category. I have to go to work every day. I can't do mine from home. But so here's my speech. I shall not seek and will not accept that 10%. So who am I paraphrasing?
Lyndon Baines Johnson, of course.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You and I are one of probably half a dozen people on the island old enough to remember that speech. Yes, sir. That's exactly right. Good job, Judge.
And there was a guy back about that same time. I don't know if you remember, if you're talking about trivia, do you remember Pat Paulson?
Oh, of course, he ran for president. He was on Laugh-In.
Yeah.
And, actually didn't do too badly.
And his name was Pat Paulson, but you remember what his campaign slogan was?
Oh, I do remember. It was funny. It was something like you could do worse, or it was something funny like that. What was it?
Pat Paulson's campaign slogan: "We can't stand Pat."
That's right. That's right. It's brilliant. Oh, Judge, thanks very much for that. Well, I'm on my way home from another hard day's work, and I just thought I'd call and give you your little trivia tip.
Well, it's always a pleasure having you on the program, Tom. Thanks for calling.
Thanks, Judge.
We can't stand Pat. So anyhow, okay, let's take a short break here.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Talk Tells with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, when you absolutely need confidentiality in your real estate transactions.
And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So the way I read this regulation here, the personnel rules 8.406C2, Dr. Tom Poole, you're not an unclassified employee. If you're still working, you'd be entitled to double pay. And then, of course, Lou has tacked on another 25% for those who are encountering the hazard. So if we have to apply everything that's been said here, then it would be $1,000 for staying home, another $1,000 for coming to work, 25% for hazard. That takes a $1,000 payday up to $2,500. Now, Lou says that she has the authority. In her executive order, she says in her executive order, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Organic Act, I hereby order the Director of Administration. Of course, she says the Director of the Department of Administration. She says she can order the Director, or the equivalent in case of autonomous agencies, to pay out these bonuses. I've been reading the Organic Act for 50 years, and I couldn't find that section in the Organic Act. Maybe the necessity antigokos, because I couldn't find it in the Organic Act anywhere. And I think the reason I can't find it is because it's not there. But the point here, that Lou wants to make is this. It's the very point that the Daily News editorial is dinging her on. I want everybody to know in the government of Guam that I'm going to pander to you, even in the face of the Wuhan virus. My number one priority is to pander to you, government of Guam employees, give you raises that I don't have the authority to give, even though there's already a raise in the personnel rules. Now, it could very well be that Lou overlooked that, but had such a powerful desire to pander that she made up the 25% out of whole cloth. I suppose one could assume that when Talina or any other senator sends the governor a letter, it's not exactly what we would call a priority undertaking for the governor. Why should she pay any attention to what senators write? They never go into session anyhow. They've been on strike since the beginning of the lockdown. So, of course, and I've commented on this before, anyone who runs for public office immediately decides that he has to look at the 1972 playbook for running for office on Guam. And probably on the first page it says, Gov Guam workers tend to vote as a block. So make sure that when you're making your campaign speeches and you're forming your platform, you promise a lot to Gov Guam workers, because you probably can't get elected without Gov Guam workers. Well, here we are, 25% for people who get paid for not coming to work. All right, so that's Demi Crutney for today. I've noticed I've got some comments on Facebook here. Let me just kind of scroll through that, and I like to give our Facebookers a little FaceTime on the air, actually. So Pam was the first one to sign in today, and Frenchie's here, which will make a lot of folks happy. Rico Blancaflor is here. Joseph Camacho, does anyone have a few beers you can lend me? Well, I think that's possible, Joseph, but if you want someone to lend you a few beers, it's going to have to be a dead drop. A person could not hand you a six-pack because that would be a violation of the no groups larger than one rule and the social distancing rule. So you'd have to make an agreement with the donor to leave the six-pack somewhere, at a designated location at the dead drop. And the idea would be that the beer would be at the dead drop, say at 1,500, and you'd make the pickup at 1,510. That would give the donor the time to get at least 6 feet away. That would be my 2 cents worth on that one. I hope it works out for you guys. And then our Carl comes along. He says, he's just checking in, I guess, waiting, making sure that the Ferris wheel is spinning. And let's see, who else have I got here? Yabit Camacho says they can strike their something. Pam Duvall, they've made it. They have it made in the shade. Gov Guam workers have it made in the shade. True enough. And Gus DeSangas, a rebuke and a stumbling block to tyranny and oppression. Well, that's tall tales. A stumbling block to tyranny and oppression. Nate horns in and he says, with some cold lemonade. Well, if anybody wants to drink the Tall Tales Kool-Aid, I'll give you a napkin. Just make sure you wipe your lip after you drink it. And then Yabit says with air conditioning, and Chris Wong, when it came to fishing or plastic straws, there was an outcry. Now just just a lone senator could get fined $5,000 for not staying home and for picketing. Yeah. I guess he's okay if he's picketing out there by himself and there's no one within 6 feet of him. But even then, it's hard to say. Gus Chasongas, can the people demand the resignation of a senator or senators? They certainly can, Gus. And we have a procedure called recall, where there's a petition drive could cause the recall of a senator. Just kick him out of office. A turn the rascal out mechanism. Gus says, so picketing alone is violating social distancing? Probably not, at least given the executive orders that we have today. Now, we may get a new executive order tomorrow that says thou shalt not picket if you don't want to be dinged for social distance. And Greg Palomo, dear Congressman, don't give any money to those that talk crap about the federal government and the buildup. They said they don't need you, okay? Chris Wong, Gus Castro Jasongas, non-essential activity. Gus Jasongas, let's see. Kim Jong-lu, a great name for Governor Leon Guerrero. And then Rico comes along, Governor Lou, Colonel Klink, Speaker Tina, Sergeant Schultz. Well, I like the Colonel Klink. Schultz, what is the meaning of this? Oh, Colonel Klink, I see nothing. I hear nothing. I know nothing. Klink, get out. Schultz, get out of my sight. Oh, yes, sir. All right. Yes, sir, Schultz. I don't know where I am, but why not? Andrew Camacho, the workers who stay home are susceptible to bed sores and deserve a 75% differential. And then Carl Bora Nelson, also known as R. Carl. I can't believe not one of the 6 didn't see the proposed fine and prison term for the crime of violating the social isolation directive was a bad idea. That's scary. Thousands of private sector people have lost all income. The bill demonstrates a total disconnect from the reality that thousands of private sector employees have to live with. I'm going to come back to what I refer to as the silly 6 and their bill setting the $5,000 fine for violating the social distance rules. Andrew Bainham, the proposed bill by Tina and company want to punish people that violate her quarantine rules will be fined $5,000 or up to a year in jail. Did they forget about the 8th Amendment? I suspect that they didn't forget about it, Andrea. They probably didn't know that it existed because they have a hard time getting past the First Amendment. Freedom to peaceably assemble. And I got Michael Flores here. I've been out of work since March 18. I'm not sure if I'll be going back to work for the rest of the school year since I'm a bus driver employed by Alutic to drive a bus for the Dodea schools. There are a lot of us who could use the stimulus or tax refunds due to us right now. Bills still need to be paid, and essential items like food and beverages, etc. Our leaders need to step up and get things rolling a lot faster. And that's what I'm saying. You know, there are bills introduced. I haven't decided whether I like them or I don't like them. But a legislature, a senator, these are the expectations for a senator. we expect senators to introduce bills that would, in my mind, bring about an effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law on at least a break-even basis. That's what I expect. And this would require senators to introduce bills. I would expect senators to do that. I would expect senators to come to session, come to public hearings, pay attention at public hearings, pay attention at session, speak up at session if they have something to say, and vote intelligently. I don't expect them to stay home and draw paychecks and do nothing. And so far, the only senator who seems to have much of an understanding of at least what one citizen wants to see is Jim Moylan, who's out there with a picket sign right now. Or at least he was a little earlier. So, good point, Michael Flores. Gus comes back and says the Eighth Amendment should be plastered to the desks of each senator who sponsored the bill. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel or unusual punishment inflicted. People are laid off and are now unemployed. Does this bill sound right? Our Carl comes back and says the proposed $5,000 fine and 1 year prison term shows a total disconnect from reality ordinary, now unemployed workers have to live with. And then we've got Joe Ed Cruz, another Joe. Joe Ed Cruz, things these so-called elected officials and Lou forget private firm employees are registered voters. So come election time, don't forget that. Prudencio Mano, we need to start to show the number of people given an economic assistance as part of the governor's daily release. And Mike Middlebrook, I don't know how GovGuam does it, but the federal government, multiple differentials are all calculated against the base salary separately, then added together. So I suspect the extra 25% you talked about would be 25% of the base pay of 1,000, and doubling 25 would be 10, et cetera. That's not my point, Mike. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that the governor has no authority to do the 25%, and that the doubling is in the rules and has been in the rules ever since. And what kind of lunacy would allow the governor to set forth the 25% without going through the same explanation that you've gone through here? She just said 25%. So either I don't know which is the more frightening. Either she doesn't know what she's doing, or she does know what she's doing. Either way, it's not a very good scenario. Okay, so that'll wind up Zemi Kotny for today. And we're coming up pretty close to the short break before the big halftime show. Let me just relate what's in the card, and then we'll take the break. Okay, Real Joe Cruz? Okay, I've got Lou and Tina versus the law. And you've already seen a little taste of Lou and the law, and how she either doesn't know anything about it on the one hand, or doesn't care anything about it on the other. And then I've got Helen Middlebrook versus perceived wisdom. I've got Andrew and Bill O'Reilly versus big government. This is not Andrew O'Reilly, it's our Andrew. Andrew, the poet laureate, and Bill O'Reilly versus big government. And then I've got to come back to the Vigilance Committee versus Lou, because I haven't talked for a couple days about the violence that Lou did to the open government law. And if you listen to Mike San Nicolas's remarks, his phone conference this morning, you'll realize how critical a well-functioning open government law is. I'm not going to spend much time on Michael San Nicolas's chat with the senators, because a lot of folks hadn't seen it, and there won't be any record of it until tomorrow's papers come out, and then we'll talk about it. But I did have one observation, and that is that I would make an award to Mary Camacho, who best used the forum of the conference call with Michael San Nicolas to exercise her ability to virtue signal. She was right in there demonstrating care for the lowly workers of the lowly non-GovBom workers. Very good show, Mary. Great virtue signaling. Okay, so that's the card. I'm going to come back to Lou and Tina versus the law. Take a short break first.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Give them a call at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Okay, I got a couple callers on the line here. I noticed that the Real Joe Cruz has opened up the Jimmy line. Jimmy, you're right behind another Joe. I'll take another Joe first, and then we'll go to, is it one Jimmy or three Jimmys today?
I think it's one, sir.
Just one Jimmy? Okay. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Hey, Uncle Bob. What do you think about this, going after the retiree fund? Do you think they should ask the retirees first if they like the idea? And also, the wire operation people, what do you think about that?
Well, you have to, if you want to talk about those subjects, you have to realize that most people don't know what you're talking about, another Joe. So do you want to flesh it out? That's why I said I would get into Michael San Nicolas's remarks tomorrow after they've been reported in the paper.
Okay. I think that's a better idea. So I'll just hang up and let the other guy have some of your time, Uncle Bob. I'll call back later. Thanks.
Okay, another Joe. Okay, so here's Jimmy.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? Okay, full disclosure. I have never wallowed around in the GovGuam public trough.
Okay.
Never have, never will.
All right.
So I've been reading the book Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and just serendipitous. Could I read you just like 2 paragraphs?
I like Ayn Rand, so yeah, go ahead.
She says, okay, it applies to the no driving around in your car, no going to the beach. So there's no way to rule innocent men. The only power any government has is the power to crack down on criminals. Well, when there aren't enough criminals, one makes them. One declares so many things to be a crime that it becomes impossible for men to live without breaking laws. We want a nation of law-abiding citizens. What's there in that for anyone? But just kind of pass the kind of laws that can neither be observed nor enforced nor objectively interpreted. And you create a nation of lawbreakers, and then you cash in on the guilt. Now that's the system. That's the game.
And that's why freedom-loving people are so apprehensive about socialism, because that's exactly what happens in socialism. The economic crimes abound.
Well, all politics for me is local. And I'm worried about being able to drive around without wearing in Germany, I'd have to wear I wouldn't, but some people would, and that would be wrong, to wear a Star of David on my arm. Or I have to have a A or a B on the car. Or I'll be stopped at a checkpoint. Lord, did she actually say that?
Yeah, she did. She has executive orders on that point.
I'm befuddled. If people allow that to go through, they deserve it.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy, maybe there's a word that you don't understand. Are you ready for this?
It's only one?
We got the word for this. It's called the Gestapo. Can you say that? Gestapo.
The Gestapo. Ich kann es sprechen.
Aha.
Ich kann es sprechen.
Jawohl, mein Herr.
Jawohl. Oder?
Jawohl. Helge, sprechen Sie Deutsch.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen, Jimmy. All right. Gostung feno Aleman, said Jimmy. All right. So where was I here? Yeah, Lou and Tina versus the law. We got just a few minutes here before the big halftime show. But there's a lot here, and I hope I'm able to remember everything and to lay it all out very clearly. First of all, Lou has come up with several executive orders that are full of thou shalt nots. Thou shalt not associate, and thou shalt not form groups larger than one person. Thou shalt not open thy store if thou art not essential, etc., etc. But the one thing that Lulu seems to have forgotten is that her thou shalt nots are rather hollow, because there's no or else connected with her thou shalt not. And as Jimmy kind of pointed out, in the absence of a or else, a thou shalt not is kind of meaningless. So I got James on the line here. James, you got about 2 minutes, but if you have a lot to say, I'll let you come back after the big halftime show, okay?
Actually, if you can, with your legal expertise, I just got a question, and I'll listen to your answer off the air, off the phone, on the air. So my question is, with this $5,000, I guess, fee that you pay if you were to get arrested and picked up if you were strolling outside, what if I wanted to do my right to a speedy trial? How does that work? If I get incarcerated and everything and all.
Yeah, well, she hasn't attempted to change that yet, and I don't think she can.
So that portion is still in the books.
It is, yes.
Okay, all right. Is there any ramifications on their end? That's the question I want. That's the question that is like, if I get picked up and everything, and I say, okay, I'm arrested, I got caught, I want my right to a speedy trial. How long does the government have to effectuate that? That's my question.
I think it's 40 days from an indictment to trial.
All right, thanks, Bob.
Okay, James. Okay, let's break for that big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Pulling no punches. I'm Paul Stevens, Fox News. A blunt warning Sunday from the nation's top doctor, Surgeon General Jerome Adams, about what's ahead in the coming week for the U.S. amid the coronavirus outbreak.
This is going to be the hardest and the saddest week of most Americans' lives, quite frankly. This is going to be our Pearl Harbor moment, our 9/11 moment, only it's not going to be localized. It's going to be happening all over the country.
Dr. Adams on Fox News Sunday, a possible slight glimmer of hope for New York City. Daily deaths and ICU admissions there falling just slightly. U.S. deaths now at over 9,600. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, diagnosed with the coronavirus more than a week ago, now admitted to a hospital for tests after having symptoms for 10 days. The 55-year-old Johnson testing positive for COVID-19 on March 26th and being quarantined at number 10 Downing Street. President Trump, meantime, thinking about creating another task force amid the coronavirus pandemic.
He said he is considering an idea that was tweeted out by our own Dana Perino, suggesting he create a second task force focused solely on the longer-term goal of reopening the economy. It's important to note, despite that desire to reopen the country, President Trump said he is not going to be changing the recommendations from his task force to maintain social distancing guidelines through the end of this month.
Fox's Garrett Tenney. A tiger in New York City's Bronx Zoo testing positive for the new coronavirus, believed to be the first infection in an animal in the U.S. and the first known in a tiger anywhere. Officials saying the 4-year-old tiger and 6 other tigers and lions have also fallen ill. They're believed to have been infected by a zoo employee. All the animals are expected to recover. America's listening to Fox News.
Guam is home to strong and resolved people. As an island, we regularly deal with the destructive forces of nature together. We at Security Title know that when the storm passes, our families and neighbors will join together to clear the debris, to barbecue whatever is thawing in our freezers, and get back to the business of wholeheartedly living our lives. As our island struggles with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, let us remember that this too shall pass.
One of the easiest ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Let this message help you time it. Start soaping up now. Disinfecting high-touch surfaces daily is key to preventing the spread of viruses. Use solutions with at least 70% alcohol. Some disinfectant brands that have products that meet the EPA's criteria for use against the coronavirus include Clorox, Ecolab, Kimberly-Clark, Lysol, Purell, and SC Johnson. Choice Broadcasting reminds you to stay safe and stay clean. You can rinse now.
Democrats might be entertaining the thought of a nominating convention held in cyberspace.
Democratic presidential frontrunner Joe Biden suggests his party's presidential nominating convention, already pushed from July into August because of the pandemic, may have to move fully online to avoid packing thousands of people into an arena in Milwaukee.
We're going to have to do a convention, may have to do a virtual convention. I think we should be thinking about that right now. The idea of holding a convention is going to be necessary, but we may not be able to put 10, 20, 30,000 people in one place, and that's very possible.
Biden appearing on ABC's This Week. Sal Giangrasso, Fox News.
Joe Biden not able to continue his campaign against Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders for the time being because of the COVID-19 outbreak. Europe, meantime, seeing further signs of hope in the coronavirus battle, with Italy's daily death number at its lowest in more than 2 weeks and its infection curve finally on a downward slope. In Spain, new deaths dropped for a third straight day on Sunday. A search for drugs in South Texas leads to a wild discovery.
DEA agents conducting a narcotics investigation at a home in a small town of Mercedes, Texas, find a small zoo on a 5-acre property. The agents went armed with a search warrant and got more than they bargained for last week. Ended up seizing a white Bengal tiger, a bobcat, llamas, emu, and even a deer. Officials were forced to euthanize the bobcat and deer and the other animals taken to the zoo for a medical evaluation. No word on whether any drugs were found or whether any arrests were made. made. Sue Guzman, Fox News.
The coronavirus outbreak canceling a planned public gathering Sunday on the 10th anniversary of the worst U.S. mining disaster in decades. 29 men died in an explosion at the Upper Branch Mine in Whitesville, West Virginia, back on April 5th of 2010. I'm Paul Stevens, and this is Fox News.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Social distancing math. Tossie is infected with COVID-19. She still goes out because she and her friends think it doesn't affect them. Tossie infects 3 friends. Each one infects 3 more. In 30 days, 244 people are infected, including someone's Nana. Most recover, but Nana dies. Reduce your social contact. If you only infect 1 person, in 30 days, the virus spreads to only 4 people. Stay home, stop the spread, save lives.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So another big halftime show here on Tall Tales. That 1812 Overture just gets better every time I hear it.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a great song. I know which song you like better, though, Real Joe Cruz.
Which one, sir?
Ravel's Bolero.
Oh,
you're
right again, sir.
Yeah. So, Real Joe Cruz, let's get out our Law and Order notebooks here. So before the break, I was mentioning that Kim Jong-Lu has all these executive orders telling people what they cannot do, what they must not do, all of the thou shalt nots. But there's no punitive provision anywhere in the law. Well, there are 2 that I'll talk about in just in a moment. So if the executive order says thou shalt not congregate in groups larger than 1, and the Real Joe Cruz and I and Ray and several other folks are standing around out in front of the studio cracking jokes, and a policeman comes along and he says, "Hey, you guys, move along," and we don't do it. What can the cop do?
Probably tase you, sir.
All he can do is the dreaded Atan Baba.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would put us. That's not what the executive order says, but that's kind of what it means.
You sure you and I shouldn't just point at Ray?
Yeah. Let him take the blame for it, right? Yeah. Ray said we should come out. He had some important stuff to tell us, so he said, "Come on outside," right? So I scanned the criminal code to see if there's any punishment that could be levied upon people for congregating in groups larger than 1. And these are the two provisions I came up with. 9 GCA 61.5 A3, and this is what it reads, how it reads. A person is guilty of disorderly conduct if with the intent to cause public inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm, or recklessly creating a risk thereof, no, the statute's wrong here because it says it should say they, create a hazardous or physically offensive condition by any act which serves no legitimate purpose of the defendant. So arguably standing around in a group of 20 people fits within the loose definition of this statute. Arguably. I think the chances of finding a prosecutor who would ever take that to court are down there somewhere between slim and none. Now, there's another one also, and I'll get to that in a second. James is back, huh? A different James. Okay. Another James. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Bob. Well, I don't know. It takes unusual circumstances, and I hate to say it, but sometimes crisis situations to see who can really get their common sense hat squared away and who can't. And it looks like we're starting to see which ones of our so-called smart, educated, elected officials are capable of doing that and the ones that are not capable of doing that. And what I mean by that is they'll let commercial dumpers go out and dump all over our island out in the jungle and sometimes hazardous waste. And if they ever make an effort to catch anybody, and they do catch them, they give them a $1,500, $2,000, $2,500 fine, and then they go right back out there and they do it again. But now that we've got people that are having to stay home, now they want to fine people $5,000 unless they can prove that it's a necessity that they're going to get a prescription refilled or a broken pair of glasses repaired or replaced or something that's, deemed essential, quote unquote essential. Some of these folks have already started drinking the Kool-Aid as far as I'm concerned, because that just doesn't make sense. These people are not thinking right. And your caller that called in earlier and asked if there was a way that we could remove these people has hit the nail right on the head. They can be recalled. They can be removed, and maybe we should start those petitions now before this gets totally and completely out of hand. And it's not just happening here. It's not just happening in Saipan. It's happening stateside also. Okay, they're denying people their First and Second Amendment rights. They're getting ready to start violating Eighth Amendment rights. I don't know. I think we've got some. I think we've got some folks that the tyrant in them is starting to walk out. That's just my opinion.
Well, I think you're pretty close, James. When our Governor Lou Leon Guerrero addressed the medical community at the beginning of this problem, she referenced Title 10, Chapter 19, which no one in the audience had heard of before, which does give her certain draconian powers with respect to the medical community. And she gloated as she told them, I can take over your clinic. I can tell you what to do. I can take charge. And there's nothing you can do about it. And she didn't conclude her remarks by saying, nah, 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 nah. But that was kind of the tenor of the whole thing. And
the reason why we have all of our constitutional rights is just to prevent this very type of thing from starting. Well, no, it's going to start. It's already started. But is to prevent this type of thing from getting worse and from really getting totally out of control. She might try to do whatever she wants to do, but the bottom line is she actually going to be able to make it happen? And I would think that the answer to that would probably be no. But you're very, very correct. This is potentially, the situation that we're in with the virus is potentially dangerous. But this is an altogether totally it's different, but it's similar, related potential serious issue that we, the people, cannot allow to let these folks get out of hand with this. Once it starts down the wrong path, it really goes fast. We've got states that are, shutting down businesses and different things like that directly violate our constitutional rights. And I think part of the problem, and here again, I'm just trying to apply some common sense. I'm an engineer, so I'm trying to apply some common sense, is that I think we're using a lot of the wrong terminology. I think they're using this social distancing. Okay, well, we don't need to be socially distanced. I think we've already got a bad case of social distancing going on right now with cell phones and things like that anyway. We need to have more personal contact. But we can still have personal contact and we can still act like human beings, but we can maintain a physical distance. Okay, and that's the point. Part of the point that I'm trying to make is I think we're putting some bad misnomers on things, and we don't need to be socially distanced. I think we've already got a bad case of that. We need to maintain some temporary physical distancing.
You could maybe even work the word sanitary in there, James. A sanitary distance, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've traveled to China multiple number of times. And yes, they've got some bad health habits over there, and so they do also in the Middle East, and so they do also in South America, and a number of other places that are even a lot closer to home. A lot of it is common sense. Don't stick your fingers in your rice bowl. Make sure that you're trying to at least maintain a healthy, daily, sanitary lifestyle. But when our elected officials start getting tyrannical and they want to start, okay, she wants the authority to be able to put up roadblocks and stop traffic. She wants to take law enforcement officers that should be really and truly out doing something else that's worthy of a law enforcement officer's time and the taxpayers' money, so that she can stop cars and do the West German, I see your papers, please. Who are you? Where you go? How long you going to be there? What is your purpose? Hey, I've seen that. I've been through that. I know what that's like. And I thought that's what the United States was not supposed to be. Even under a crisis, the basic, decent way that human beings are supposed to be treated and your constitutional rights cannot just be summarily swept to the side because somebody feels like they have the authority to do so.
I've mentioned this before, James, on the program. Abraham Lincoln was heard to say that almost any man can stand a high degree of adversity, but if you want to know the true measure of a man, give him power.
Exactly, and that's why I said I think we're starting to see some of the tyrannical traits of some of these folks to come out because they've got some power and they know it, and now they're going to see how far they can run with it and what they can, hey, it's their idea, but it doesn't mean that their idea is correct or proper or it's even the best idea. It's just their idea. But because they've got a little bit of power now, they want to try to force it upon everyone. And like I said, this is a potentially whole other dangerous situation that's starting in, not just here, but also stateside, on top of the already dangerous situation that we're having to deal with. You'd think some of these people could go, wow, this is not really the time to be looking at, how can we force somebody to do something and, make the general public at large dance at the end of a string just because we can, because we've got enough other issues going on. But, yeah, seriously, if this is the way they're going to start acting, then we need to get these people out of office because they're not worthy.
Good points, James. Thank you. Are you still in Saipan?
No, I'm actually here on Guam right now.
You probably never get back to Saipan then, right?
Well, not for the foreseeable future, I don't think. But, it's not quite so bad over in Sinai, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be, and it doesn't mean that it won't be. Everything's fluid. We're having to watch on a daily basis how things are going. I mean, we know that the Chinese lied about everything. We still know that they're still lying. I mean, as of right now, they're saying there's not any cases, but they still don't have enough, incinerators and body bags for the cremations that they have to do. So we know they're still lying. And we know that this is all going to be it's in almost every continent, if not every continent of our planet. There is no such thing as containment anymore, and they've stopped talking about containment. Now they're that buzzword trying to flatten the curve. Okay, that makes total sense. 6 million people show up at the hospital in 1 month. No, they probably can't they can't handle that. That would be a complete overrun of our resources. But if they can stretch that 6 million out over the next 4 to 5, 6 months, that's doable. Maybe a strain, maybe stress, but it's doable. And I think what it's all going to come down to, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a clinician, but I am former military and I've been through the training. I know what an airborne contagion is. I think we're all going to be exposed to it. I don't think there's any way around it. With the way people travel, the way people move, I think we're just all going to be exposed to it. And I think we're just going to have to try to use common sense, stay clean, stay sanitary, best practices, etc. I mean, one friend of mine, he just got hassled by the police this morning, okay, because he was riding his bike. He didn't have anybody with him, never mind 6 feet. He didn't have anybody with him around him for 300 feet. And he's out trying to get some exercise by himself. And a police officer pulled up and stopped him and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "I'm by myself. I don't have anybody around. What difference does it make?" And they're hassling him because he's out riding his bike. This is exactly what she wants a license to do on the streets and pull traffic over and throw roadblocks and checkpoints.
It's gotten so bad.
Not.
It's gotten so bad that they're even hassling Linda Uggan for not keeping social distance.
Well,
enjoy.
She needs to think about it because it's a really bad direction to go.
Enjoy your stay on Guam, James. Thanks for calling.
Roger that. Thanks, Bob.
Yes, sir. And, of course, we got our Carl on the line here. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, Bob. Can you hear me?
I can hear you 5 by 5, our Carl.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear the little swish sound or whatever that sound is. Anyway, I think this is really, we're getting some demonstrations of what is possible if we ever sever our ties with our constitutional protections. With the governor, with a stroke of a pen, doing away or gutting key parts of the open government law. And then now some of the senators proposing this, what I think is really way out in left field legislation, and doing it in all seriousness. I think it just illustrates what's possible if we ever cut our ties with the constitutional protections. And I've said before, it's the most precious thing we have in our relationship with the United States. Everything else, the economic prosperity, the military might to help us, that's all icing on the cake. This is the cake itself, those protections. And we're fortunate in that we're being given a live demonstration of what lies under the surface. These are just mild demonstrations of what is possible if we ever cut our connection with those precious protections of our personal freedoms. And the politicians tend to use these kind of events because they know that we switch to a herd mentality. And I'll quote again from a book that was written in the 1870s by Charles Mackay, and it still sells very, very well, especially to investors. It says, "Men, it has been well said, think in herds. It will be seen that they go mad in herds while they only recover their senses slowly and one by one. and that's from the book Extraordinarily Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. And it still sells well because it's so true. It's just a record of case after case of people just moving in herds. And the politicians know this, that when we're fearful, we're much more herdable. And I just one quick other point regarding all that we're doing now. No matter what we do, we're going to have to eventually be exposed to it and overcome it. The Spanish flu in 1918, I've heard estimates of as high as 120 million people killed around the world. And that came in 3 waves. The second wave was the worst wave. And so I don't know how this is going to operate, but, you know, we're going to have to develop herd immunity one way or another. We're going to have to be exposed to it and wait it out. Otherwise, it's just going to keep sweeping through over and over again.
I plan on picking that up. If I don't get to it in this show, I'll get to it in tomorrow's show. But you're absolutely right, Carl. The only time that the Wuhan virus will end, assuming that we can't find a vaccine soon enough, is when there are no more hosts for the Wuhan virus. And so long as we're trying to flatten the curve and save people from being infected by the Wuhan virus, there'll be an abundant supply of hosts for the virus to inhabit. So I'm going to pick...
The ones we really need to be concerned about are the most vulnerable. You know, the elderly. The higher the age bracket, the more casualties among the elderly. And then there are people with lung problems, especially the elderly. You know, COPD, asthma, bronchitis, and other problems, heart problems, you know, obesity, things like that.
I have one of those maladies myself. I've got a couple of risk factors myself, Carl. I'm old, and I have this lung condition. I'm a blowhard. But I don't think it's fatal. It just depends on who the audience is, I guess.
Yeah, very true. But for people who are young and basically healthy, and even elderly people, you know, most of them do survive. I think I saw one estimate for the fatality rate among elderly, and it was like 15%. But a lot of the elderly do survive. But the fatality rate is higher than the people under 60, though.
I did speculate when the whole Brett Crozier thing came up. I speculated that one of the possibility was that the chain of command had decided that the most important thing was to get that ship back to sea, so that there would be people on board who had the Wuhan virus. The ones that got sick would be airlifted to Guam, to Naval Hospital. The others would stay on board because they're young and healthy. Some of them wouldn't even know they were infected. Some would be sick, etc. But the ship would develop herd immunity and would have remained battle ready during the whole episode until Brett came along and decided that he had priorities other than the Navy chain of command. Now, I'm just speculating. I don't know if that's the idea that they had, but it would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and the irony is that most of those people, I mean, sailors are, I think, pretty fit, you know, but there would be some casualty rate.
Yeah, thank goodness they don't put Air Force guys on board ship.
Oh, that hurt. My son's in the Air Force. That really hurt. But yeah, but you know, and I supported him initially, but then I was taken to the woodshed by some of my military friends, and they explained, and I saw the light. You know that what he did was he gave the enemy exactly what they were trying to avoid giving the enemy, which is information on a weakness within within the Navy and in a vital area in the Pacific where China has critical interests in what is going on. So he just came right out and openly told them exactly what the Navy higher-ups did not want them to know. You know, they wanted that stuff kept hidden from the Navy, and he just, and you can say, well, his heart was in the right place, but that's, you know, the military just doesn't function that way. They have a mission, and mission comes first, period.
That's not how commanders are chosen. It's not a matter of cardiac placement. Okay, I got to take a break, and right after the break, we've got Frenchie on the line, so thanks for calling, Carl.
All right. Bye.
Oh, shit.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Hafidi, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call them at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
A seventh-inning stretch in a dead, empty Wrigley Field in Chicago. And if you were to look out on Maitland Avenue, there's no traffic out there either. Such as the world is here in this time of the Wuhan virus.
But who's that way in the top wearing a beret?
Frenchie.
Oh.
Monsieur de Frenchie. Yeah. So I was listening to that commercial there just before the beginning of the seventh inning stretch, and what am I doing here, Real Joe Cruz?
You're trying to see far, sir?
I'm trying to find the
horizon.
You got it. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you for broadening my horizon, sir.
You're welcome, Real Joe Cruz. Okay, so let's find out what Frenchie has to say. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Bob. It sounds like you had a very nice Palm Sunday. You're full of good play of words today.
Every time I come back to Tall Tales on a Monday afternoon, I'm just as happy as I could be. There's nothing like a Monday on Tall Tales.
Happy as a lark.
Exactly.
All right. Well, let's see. I was happy too. Real Joe Cruz didn't sing, and it's not raining, so it's kind of nice. Two things. Little Lou's dictatorial tendencies, those are not new. I mean, we knew that before she campaigned. We knew that when she was a senator. We knew that by the people she surrounded herself with to run her campaign. You know, none of them are very big constitutionalists, let's put it that way. And so now that we have a crisis, like you mentioned, or I think it was one of your guests that mentioned that earlier, the real person is showing up. And at the same time, the media is been real bad. Beside panicking people on one side, there is a tendency to stay put regarding all kind of stories that are going on. one of the issues that the governor has to face besides the Wuhan virus is the fact that A, GPD is overstretched, B, there's been a huge increase of small crimes all around the island, which the media has failed to report except maybe for Candid News, and that's probably why Candid News has been banned from Adelup by, what's his name, the guy with the cross eye that's supposed to be the political advisor to Lou. And so what you have now is that she has to try to put a lid on all those petty crimes because people are getting a little PO'd. And so the only thing she has is National Guard and putting roadblocks and things like that so that GPD can do something else. But, it's kind of shooting darts in the dark because really the National Guard, even though they might train a little bit for those kind of things, that's not their job. And so this is kind of the dichotomy she's got in, right, in regards to this issue.
Sure.
You follow me on that?
I do.
Yeah. Now, the other thing, of course, is, it's not the first pandemic that's going on, and we know very well the things that work. The thing that work is closing your borders, not as a panacea to stopping everything, unless you're on a small island like American Samoa did in 1918, but more like a time-saving technique to take the appropriate step to protect your own population. We also know that immediate testing on a large scale works. That is what the Taiwanese and what the Koreans have done, and they've been very successful as kind of identifying the hot spots of the infection and work very fast to quarantine people and to give medical treatment to the ones that needed it immediately before more people got infected. And the third step is tracking the people that are quarantined and the sick. Now, that brings all kind of issues about private life and everything. The Taiwanese are basically using the GPS on your cell phone to track where you are when you are on quarantine, making sure that you don't go out, because it's actually nobody can go out when they are quarantined. They bring you food. They bring you all the necessary supplies at your place, but they don't allow you any contact with another person. That's not been clear. So, but that brings for us some civil rights issues which we have not addressed, because those have been really the countries that have done that very well, have been very successful. Germany, who has taken kind of a step in between because they closed the border but they let all the illegal immigrants come in, and at the same time they did huge testing. They did almost 700,000 tests since the beginning, which is more than the U.S. and the rest of Europe combined, has been able to control the numbers of infections. So we know those things can be done. On Guam here, we haven't done any of those steps. When President Trump decided to stop all flights and not letting people coming from China, which at the origin was the explosion site, we still had Chinese tourists coming on the island 2 hours before the deadline, and there was no common sense used by the administration to stop those people from coming in. There was no common sense applied in any way. There was no organization to try to get the right supplies, to try to use the medical local community to help. Nothing. We have no tests. We have a shortfall of equipment for the hospital workers and the medical workers in other place. And so we have a perfect storm. And actually, you know, I've mentioned this before, you know, from Frederick Hayek. Emergency has always been the pretext on which safeguards of individual liberties have been eroded. And then we see that right now. And it's kind of a catch-22 for the governor, because in order to survive politically, she has to appear to do something, and the only thing that she has left is to be dictatorial and try to say, oh, I've been acting up, I stopped people from doing this and that. But basically, the horse is already out of the barn. She's closing the doors of the barn after the horse ran away. And that's what we're facing right now. And there is a lot of confusion. I must admit that I thought there would be more people self-aware about the dangers, but it seems like a lot of the communities on the island were still very jolly, happy-go-lucky, and not really realizing the kind of issues we were facing. So it's really a perfect storm we're facing, and we might have a lot of bad days in front of us before it gets better. At all levels, civil rights, political rights, health, and a number of deaths from the Wuhan virus.
The one bright spot here in this whole situation, Frenchie, is that we still have Tall Tales. She hasn't been able to shut down Tall Tales yet.
Yeah, don't give her any IDs.
Okay,
no,
Frenchie.
but one thing that's positive is that it actually shows the emperor has no clothes, and it actually shows the ineptitude of both the governor and the senators, except for a couple of exceptions. And the fact that we have to have a senator with a billboard demonstrating to ask for the rest of the Senate to do their job is mind-boggling. It's shameful.
It is. You know, the mental image I have of the governor and the senators, except for maybe Moylan, is they're in a swimming pool and they're in way over their heads, and they're trying to claw their way back up to the surface, but they're not getting anywhere because they're in so far over their heads.
Yeah, and the problem is that when you surround yourself, which is often the case on Guam, with yes men or yes women that are just there because they are the cousin or the nephew or the niece of somebody else that you know, or somebody that you owe a favor to, then you don't have really a big backbench of people that can come to the rescue.
True enough, Frenchie.
You know? But
Exactly.
at least, you know, if something should... The problem is our local media is covering up. You know, Friday we talked about Senator Perez, and guess what? On Saturday, the Guam Post was having a live interview with curveballs with Senator Perez to try to have her justified her terrible actions. And this is mostly what the local press does. The only exception being Candid. But Candid is, is also like a loose cannonball. But, you know, they are the only one that are bringing the issues up front in a very partisan way, but at least they are bringing stories out. The rest are basically sitting on the story, and it is not a service for the public, the general public at large on the island. And we're a small community.
True enough.
So what do they think that they can cover up for so long?
True enough, Frenchie. Frenchie, I got another Joe and another
All right.
Jack on the line, but I want to
Yeah,
thank you
thanks.
for calling in.
Thank you for letting me vent a little bit, and I hope it brings some more questions to the rest of the auditors. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you, Bob.
So long, Frenchie. So I've got another Joe and Jack, and another Joe has already had one ride on the Ferris wheel, so I'm going to go to another Jack first. Good afternoon, another Jack.
Good afternoon, Bob. I would like to say happy Police State Monday to you.
All right. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, so it's okay with another Joe because I think we're 6 feet apart. And so we can I guess occupy the same space. But I wanted to bounce off Frenchie. He mentioned Taiwan. Unfortunately, the United Nations doesn't recognize Taiwan. And this past, I think it was yesterday, a reporter asked one of the WHO, one of the WHO directors, what about, like Frenchie mentioned, what about what Taiwan's doing? How successful are? And the director had the nerve to say that, oh, we've already talked about China.
Sure.
And he wouldn't respond to the Taiwan question. So that's one thing. Another thing I wanted to ask, it's not so much I worry about the $5,000 fine and I do worry about it, $5,000 fine and the citation that comes along with it and the possible jail time. I'm worried about the other things that might be attached to it, like if you have a child in the car or something like that. Could they include endangering a child? That's the kind of thing that I worry about. So a lot of the way they put it, it makes this law or this whatever you want to call it, executive order, sound so subjective.
Well, it is, and it's horribly flawed, and I didn't get to it today, but tomorrow I'm going to do a full chapter and verse on both bills.
Okay.
Yeah,
sure. So I know I don't have that much time, but I also wanted, we've discussed this months ago, so I didn't want to bring it about the Wuhan virus and like Frenchie mentioned, the late alert or the late awareness, because remember when this was blazing through, all we heard from the governor was every 30 minutes how you could get your war claims checked. So that Frenchie has a great point. Now here's the thing that I'm really concerned about. Do you know what a daigo is in Chinese?
I don't.
A daigo is like
I know what a daigo
like
is in Chamorro.
Yeah. Well, it's like a personal shopper. So what happened was, do you remember when in China a couple of years ago, I'd say about a decade ago, they had that problem with the infant milk. The kids were getting sick in China by drinking the infant milk, and they found out that it was contaminated. I think, and it was a big thing back there in China. So what happened was, a lot of the baby formula here in Guam were going off the shelf. You try to buy baby formula. This was back in 2008, I think. You try to buy baby formula, and you couldn't find any. And said, what's going on here? So what was happening was these daigos were buying up all the baby formula and shipping it back to China, because there's a way to circumvent these taxes, these tariffs, if you don't ship it through personal mail. And that's what they were doing. And they've been doing it for a while, and they do it with duty-free goods and stuff like that. So fast forward to that time I asked you about the N95 mask. I know it's a while back. It was like back in December or January. I asked you about price gouging and about the N95 mask. Now, before we got into it, the reason why I was asking is because all the masks were already disappearing before the government did anything. This was like December and the beginning of January. They were all going, supplies, hand sanitizers, they were flying off the shelf for no apparent reason. So people think that, it's us that are hoarding it here in Guam, when that's not the fact. The fact is these things were bought by these daigos, and they were sent back to China. That's, I have a big problem when, first of all, we're on an island, but I hate it when our resources, are taken out and shipped somewhere else. Not for, for humanitarian reasons, but for profit. And you find out that this was been going on in the States also. A lot of the stuff was being bought at Home Depots, at Lowe's. There was this one Daigo that went into Lowe's and said to the manager, I need all the N95s that you have. I'm sending them back to China for a donation. Said this in English. The manager in Lowe's says, that's a humanitarian thing. I'm giving you 20% off on these masks. And you know what they did? They sent it back. It wasn't for donation. It was for pure profit. So it's, you could hear them speaking Chinese in the video. That's 20% more we're going to make. So there's these things that are going on that happened before, and we weren't prepared for it. My favorite quote, sometimes people might hear it or heard it once or twice, is Mark Twain's history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes.
Good point,
So
Jack.
we've seen these things happen before. We've done nothing to address the issues. I mentioned this before about the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, which can be found on the Homeland Security webpage. It might have been updated, but I have the old copy. But it's things like this. But anyways, I hear the music in the background, and so I just wanted to leave you those few thoughts, and I'll listen on the radio.
Always a pleasure, Jack. Thanks for calling. Okay, so we'll take a short break, and then we'll come back to another Joe.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Yeah, so here we are. Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. The grandstands are completely empty. All the horses have been sent to the glue factory. Nevertheless, it's still a home stretch here on Tall Tales. That means I've got about 7 more minutes to take Tall Tales down to the finish line. And riding on the Ferris wheel for the second time today, I have not the real Joe Cruz, but another Joe is on the line. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Hey, Uncle Bob, I have a feeling that those horses weren't sent to the glue factory. Instead, they were sent to France for a profit.
Well, they might have been sent to China for all we know.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So, Uncle Bob, I think the thing I want to bring up, first of all, is, of course, I think they should have a session sooner rather than later, because all sorts of talent can present themselves with great ideas, to our legislature, given the opportunity. And the speaker and the governor need to provide that opportunity to our island. It certainly take a lot of pressure off of them to get the ball rolling. And,
well, another Joe, I've been talking about a part-time legislature repeatedly, but Tina Rose Munia Barnes has seen my part-time legislature, and she's raised the bet. she's seen my part-time legislature, and she's raised it a no-time legislature. So they're not in session part-time. They're just not in session at all, kind of telling you how badly we need their help.
Yep. And having said that, I think a good place to start, Bob, it was low-hanging fruit, is obviously there's going to be more of a need for compact impact money, more assistance, because there's going to be more demand and
No, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Compact impact money? How did we get the compact impact money?
Well, I mean, based on how much the government of Guam provides assistance for citizens of the freely associated.
Isn't everyone talking about the $2 trillion that $2.2 trillion that the national government is pumping out, much of which is going to come here? Isn't that kind of the main subject of conversation? Another joke?
Yes, sir. But
so I haven't heard anybody say anything about compact impact for about the last 2 weeks. Or is this just a toy that you like to get out and play with every day, or?
Well, whenever you have, like, let's say you're in the military before, so whenever you go up and you have to declare every time you ship your goods, your household, what losses you have in your household, right? Damage, missing, whatever have you. So we can anticipate with this pandemic, there's going to be an increase in everything all across the board, and that would include the issue of the compact with the freely associated states. So I'm just saying that when they break out their abacus, their bean counters, so to speak, that they don't forget that aspect of it, so that it's included too in our assessment of what we need. But having said that, the next thing I will move on to is I don't know if you were watching C-SPAN, but I was watching it early in the morning, and I was watching President Trump, and I was looking at what he was saying, and he was repeating himself a lot, and I think it's because he was trying to anticipate the way the media would respond to him and criticize him. And there's one case where they asked him about these respirators. I think it was for New York State, and he was saying, they could have purchased it when they had the money. I don't know, if they look at the fact checkers to see when was the end of the fiscal year, when did they have the money to purchase these respirators, if it was the state or the hospitals, however it was that they go about the process of purchasing respirators. But he says they should have, they could have, they probably should have. Now here we are, we're addressing this issue, we're dealing with it. But I listened to the radio, right, the media and the radio, and they stopped at him saying, President Trump said they should have purchased it. They did not address that he said we're dealing with it now. And Trump said something. He said that I think I agree with. He said, you guys are reporting you're asking really negative questions. You're reporting really negative news. You're not reporting a lot of the successes. You're not reporting the positive developments. You're only focusing mostly on the negative stuff. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder if this smart aleck reporter says, "Oh, you want to see negative? I'll show you negative." By not reporting all of the news, only part of the news. I'm just saying, I think I agree with Trump that they're being negative, and I don't think that's, I don't think that's called for. Bob. I think we've had enough of tragedy and bad, sad stories. We don't need this constant negativity when, you can read between the lines. Maybe he's not the best communicator. Maybe he's not the most pleasant person. But if he said we're dealing with it, why would you not report that? Why would you stop and say?
Because the mainstream media has no part of Trump at all. They don't care if he does something that's good or bad. They're going to be against him all the way. got to go, another Joe. It's the end of the
Thanks for your
show.
time, Kebab. Take care.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. That's it for today. Another episode of Tall Tales. We'll be back tomorrow. Adios.